A 39-year-old treasure hunter walking along a forgotten coastal trail near Mendocino, California, stumbled upon something so bizarre it froze him in place. Buried beneath wind-blown sand and twisted bramble was the unmistakable outline of a metal container, old, tarnished, and sealed shut. No one had been on this stretch of land for decades, yet this box looked like it had been waiting, specifically for someone like him. When he finally cracked open the seal, what he found inside would change his life forever and baffle even the most seasoned experts. By the time authorities arrived and the contents were verified, the man was already fielding offers from publishers, historians, and collectors. But the real question still echoed in every corner of the community. How did that box get there in the first place? Would you have dared to open it? Tell us what you think, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. Elliot Granger had never been what most would call lucky. At 39, his life had been a slow tide of second chances and solitary pursuits. A former mechanic from Sacramento who turned his weekend hobby into a full-time obsession, Elliot had spent the better part of the last 6 years chasing whispers, buried loot, shipwrecked trails, forgotten war caches. He'd followed rumors through Nevada deserts and combed riverbeds in Oregon, usually turning up nothing but rusted nails and bottle caps. But that never deterred him. It was never just about the treasure. It was about the moment right before you found it. The hope, the heartbeat, the thrill. On a cool Wednesday morning in early April, Elliot set off along a barely marked trail near the coast of Mendocino, Northern California. The area was a hiker's secret. Jagged cliffs, sea-stained rocks, and stretches of trail so narrow they vanished into brush. He wasn't here by accident. A Reddit thread from 2 years ago had mentioned an unusual dip in this exact spot. Something about an unnatural depression in the ground, visible only from above. Elliot had bookmarked it and returned months later, this time with a fresh metal detector and the unshakable gut feeling that he was onto something. He started around 8 a.m., the tide low and the gulls shrieking in the sky. His backpack held his essentials: water, protein bars, gloves, a hand trowel, and his trusted Garrett at Pro detector. He worked in silence, sweeping the metal detector in wide arcs along the coastal edge, listening for the familiar chirp that might signify anything of interest. For the first 2 hours, the signals were mundane: iron-rich stones, scattered foil, a piece of an old fishing hook. But just as the morning fog began to lift, something shifted. The detector gave a high-pitched, clean tone. Not a scratchy one, not a flutter. This was solid, sharp, and unlike anything else he'd heard that day. He paused. The area was unremarkable. A slight mound surrounded by dry beach grass and eroded earth. He crouched, brushing his hand across the topsoil. Nothing. He passed the detector again. Beep. Same tone, same intensity. It was definitely something. Digging began slowly. The earth here was looser than expected, a mixture of sand and clay. Within minutes, he hit metal. The clang rang up his wrist and into his chest. Not a pipe, not a can. Flat and broad, almost like a lid. He cleared more dirt. The object was a box, no larger than a carry-on suitcase, thick with corrosion and wrapped in layers of what looked like lead foil around the edges. It was deeply wedged into the soil, suggesting it had been there a long time. He reached for his phone to snap a picture, but stopped himself. He didn't want to risk a GPS-tagged image just yet. Instead, he took a breath, pulled out his gloves, and continued uncovering the object. Something about it felt off. Not wrong, just out of place. The box didn't look like it had been left behind. It looked like it had been hidden, buried with intention. As he cleared the last of the dirt around its perimeter, Elliot noticed something else. The lid had no latch, no lock. Instead, a strange waxy seal lined the edges, faintly embossed with unfamiliar markings, partially obscured by grime and time. His heart pounded. Years of hunting had taught him restraint. Don't get too excited. But this was different. This wasn't junk, and it wasn't scrap. He sat back, staring at it. The ocean roared in the distance, indifferent and eternal. The wind picked up, rustling the dry brush. Somewhere behind him, a raven called out, short, sharp, as if warning. He almost laughed. It felt like a movie, but the weight of the moment held him in place. He reached out and tapped the seal with the edge of his trowel. It cracked, just a sliver, but it was enough. A sharp, musty scent rose from the fissure, like old leather and something sweet, almost metallic. His pulse jumped. He looked around, half expecting someone to be watching. He was alone. He checked the time. 11:34 a.m. The rest of the day would never be the same. He debated calling someone, a friend maybe, but most of his calls went unanswered these days. Instead, he did what came naturally. He leaned into the moment. Elliot pulled out his multi-tool and gently pried at the edge of the seal. It flaked, reluctant but brittle. As more of the seal gave way, the lid shifted slightly. He paused, waiting for something, anything to happen. But the world stayed quiet. And then he opened it, only a crack at first. Then, slowly, inch by inch, the top lifted. Inside was darkness, not empty, but unlit. A faint sheen of gold, silver, and something deep blue glinted beneath the dust. He peeled the lid back fully and stared into the contents, unable to move. There were 3 items resting atop a layer of faded velvet. The first, a small pouch of what looked like antique coins, silver, bronze, some etched with dates and designs he didn't recognize. The second, a stack of what seemed to be old papers, rolled tightly and sealed with a hardened wax insignia, different from the one on the lid. They smelled like history, ink, mold, and time. The third, a thin wooden case, the kind used for holding jewelry or precision instruments. He opened it. Inside lay a necklace, ornate, possibly ancient. The chain was gold but dulled with age, and the pendant, a large dark ruby set in a triangular frame, seemed to hum under the sunlight. Elliot sat frozen. He'd never seen anything like this. It wasn't just valuable, it was curated, deliberate. Someone had placed these items together for a reason, and buried them. He looked around again. Still no one, just him, the sea, and this box of secrets. He placed the items gently back inside, shut the lid halfway, and sat in the grass. His brain raced through possibilities. Was it pirate treasure? A collector's cache? A forgotten heirloom from a shipwreck survivor? Whatever it wasn't something he could carry alone, physically or legally. He took his phone out and began snapping photos, detailed shots from every angle, careful not to disturb the box further. Then he marked the GPS coordinates and took a deep breath. This was no longer a solo mission. It was time to call someone he trusted. There was only one person who might understand the weight of what he'd just found. Elliot's hands trembled as he dialed the number. It had been nearly a year since he last spoke to Charlie Greaves, a fellow hunter turned part-time historian who now ran a second-hand bookstore in Santa Rosa. Charlie was sharp, skeptical, and allergic to hype. Exactly the kind of person Elliot needed right now. The phone rang twice. "Elliot?" The voice on the other end was groggy, surprised. "You still alive? I found something." Silence. "Where?" "Coastal trail near Mendocino, about 3 miles off Point Arena. Hidden. Deep. It's a box. A sealed one. With contents." "What kind of contents?" "You need to see for yourself." An hour later, Elliot heard the crackle of gravel as Charlie's old Jeep pulled up near the trail's end. The man emerged with a wide-brimmed hat, a field bag, and the unmistakable expression of someone who had made peace with disappointment long ago. But that look didn't last. The moment Charlie saw the box, and especially once he examined the seal fragments, his demeanor changed. He crouched, examined the box without touching it, then stood in slow silence. "This isn't junk," he said. "No kidding," Elliot replied. Charlie reached for a flashlight and peered into the partially closed lid. When the light hit the ruby pendant, he let out a soft breath. "That stone alone is rare," he muttered. "But it's the papers. Those might be worth more than everything else." He carefully removed one of the scrolls, still sealed with a wax emblem. Charlie didn't break it. Instead, he held it to the light. His eyes narrowed. "This seal is French, 18th century. Could be royal or military. I've only seen similar ones in documents related to exiled nobles during the Revolution." Elliot blinked. "Revolution? As in guillotines and Marie Antoinette?" Charlie nodded. "If these are real, they might be original exile correspondences. Smuggled letters. If someone tried to hide this stuff here, we could be looking at a buried courier chest from over 200 years ago. But how would it end up here?" Elliot asked. "That," Charlie said, "is the million-dollar question." They spent the next hour cataloging the contents more carefully. The coin pouch contained at least 35 antique pieces, including Spanish doubloons, early American currency, and a coin minted in what appeared to be Prussia. Each item was aged, some marked with delicate engravings, others worn smooth by time. The documents, there were 4 in total, were tightly wound and perfectly preserved within their wax seals. The last one had faint handwritten marks on the outermost edge, faded ink barely visible. Charlie deciphered 2 words: Le Refuge. The refuge, he translated. Probably a code name, maybe a safe house. Elliot's mind raced. So, this is someone's emergency stash? Or an escape plan that never got used, Charlie said, voice low. This could rewrite a part of history if it checks out. They debated what to do next. Going public too soon could result in red tape or worse, confiscation. But hiding it wasn't an option either. This was too big. Charlie made the decision for them. We need a third opinion, someone with credentials. He knew someone at UC Berkeley, an associate professor of antiquities with a background in European artifact recovery. Her name was Dr. Lauren Ortega. Elliot was reluctant at first, but when Charlie explained her record, discretion, honesty, and no ties to auction houses, he agreed. They reached her the next morning. By that afternoon, Dr. Ortega arrived at the scene with a small team and equipment. She was composed, meticulous, and when she finally laid eyes on the box and its contents, her eyebrows rose ever so slightly. She said only one word: authentic. The analysis began immediately. Ortega's team set up a mobile tent over the site and began collecting soil samples, pollen traces, and performing 3D scans of the box and its position in the ground. She explained that, in cases like this, context was as important as content. We need to understand how it got here, not just what's in it. The tension was electric. Ortega opened one of the scrolls under controlled conditions, using gloves and a humidifier to prevent the parchment from cracking. As it unfurled, elegant French handwriting revealed itself, columns of writing, dated 1794, signed with an initial, R. Charlie gasped. Could that be Robespierre? No, Ortega said. He was executed in July of '94, but someone close to him? Possibly. This document describes the transfer of critical jewels and letters across colonial borders for safekeeping. Elliot couldn't believe what he was hearing. So this isn't just treasure. It's a trail. Ortega nodded. A trail that might lead to even more. The ruby necklace, it turned out, was a known item, photographed in a lost French catalogue in 1812, belonging to the Duchess de Brissac, who vanished during the Revolution. Her possessions were never recovered, until now. As news quietly began to circulate through academic circles, word inevitably leaked. A week later, a representative from a private collector in Geneva contacted Elliot with an offer: $1. $6 million for the box and all its contents, no questions asked. Elliot declined. Instead, he contacted a reputable auction house in New York, one that specialized in historical artifacts and had a transparent public bidding process. The documents alone fetched $780,000. The coins brought in another $320,000. The necklace, a staggering $1.9 million, purchased by a French museum. By the end of the year, Elliot had made nearly $4 million from the discovery. After legal fees, taxes, and Charlie's share, he was still comfortably in the Millionaires Club. But the money wasn't the whole story. He became a name. Interviews, podcast appearances, feature spreads in National Geographic and Smithsonian. A documentary deal followed, then a book. Elliot insisted on writing it himself, with Charlie's help, and it climbed to the top of the nonfiction bestseller list within 3 months. Dr. Ortega's research team published a paper suggesting the box had likely arrived in California via a little-known trade route used by French exiles escaping Europe by way of Nova Scotia, then traveling down the Pacific coast. The theory was compelling, though not conclusive. Still, the question remained: who buried it? Why here? Why so carefully? And was there more? Before he closed that lid on the beach, Elliot remembered seeing something wedged into the bottom seam. He hadn't told anyone, not yet. A small brass plate, barely visible. It had 3 engraved letters: CMC. Theories emerged quickly. A secret society, initials of a courier, even an unknown shipping line. But nothing definitive. And that small mystery, so simple yet so stubborn, never left him. Was it a signature? A code? A warning? Elliot never found out, but he returned to that trail often, sometimes to walk, sometimes to think, and once to dig again, just a little farther inland, just to see. He never found another box, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something else was still waiting. Somewhere beneath the soil, just beyond the reach of his detector, a second piece of the puzzle might still be hiding, untouched, unfound, watching, waiting. And now, the question passes to you. If you found a sealed box in the middle of nowhere, would you open it, or would you walk away? Let us know in the comments what you would do in that moment. Would you trust your instincts, or would curiosity win? Also, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to know how far this story has reached. And if you enjoy stories like this, true mysteries, historical secrets, and life-changing discoveries, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and click the bell icon so you never miss the next incredible story. Because who knows, the next buried secret might be in your own backyard. 2 weeks after Elliot's discovery, the story had moved beyond the coastal hills of Mendocino and into the sterile, climate-controlled archives of UC Berkeley. The contents of the box were no longer just artifacts. They were evidence. And Dr. Lauren Ortega was no longer merely a witness. She had become the lead on a growing historical investigation that now spanned continents. It didn't take long before federal interest crept in. On the third Tuesday after the find, 2 agents from the Department of Homeland Security visited the university lab. They weren't aggressive, but they asked detailed questions. Where had the box been located? Who else had touched it? Were there any signs of foreign markings, national insignias, or coded messages? Their tone suggested something beyond antiquities, and Elliot couldn't help but notice that one of them photographed everything, especially the parchment scrolls and the necklace. After they left, Dr. Ortega looked more thoughtful than worried. "They're curious," she said, probably wondering if there's a connection to stolen assets or long-lost war plunder. It wouldn't be the first time something like this surfaced under strange circumstances. Strange was an understatement. In the days that followed, Ortega's team discovered that 2 of the scrolls contained encoded segments. The third had a faded map, a sketched coastline, possibly European, but unmarked except for a peculiar emblem near what looked like a river mouth, a trident stabbing through a rose. It didn't match any known sigil, yet to Charlie it looked vaguely familiar. "I saw this once," he murmured, flipping through one of his dusty notebooks from years ago. There was a story, completely dismissed at the time, about a ship that left Marseille in 1794 carrying political defectors and royal goods. It never arrived. Rumor was it got caught in a transatlantic storm and drifted way off course, maybe even made it to the Pacific. Dr. Ortega was skeptical. That would require surviving storms, pirates, lack of navigation, then sailing south and around Cape Horn, or worse, a land transport across the Americas. Charlie shrugged. It's not probable, but it's possible. The idea was outrageous. But then again, so was a box of 18th century treasure buried on a California cliffside. Ortega authorized a chemical test on the parchment inks. The results came back strange. 2 of the scrolls used ink consistent with known formulas from late 18th century France. But one, specifically the map, contained elements found only in Central America during the early 19th century. Someone added this later, she concluded, possibly decades after the others, which means the box was opened, updated, and resealed. Elliot stared at the seal fragments still being studied under a microscope. Then the question becomes, by who and why? The deeper they looked, the stranger it got. The coins were all authentic, but one of them, a polished silver coin marked 1790 with a faded crown insignia, wasn't listed in any known catalog. The material composition didn't match French or Spanish minting processes. It had trace amounts of an alloy used primarily in ceremonial tokens, not currency. Elliot leaned in as Ortega explained this. "So, it's not money? It's a message," she said. "Possibly a membership marker, a symbol used by a closed group." She showed them the coin under magnification. Around the edges was an inscription, barely visible. When enhanced digitally, it read, "Pour ceux qui saved, pour ceux qui attendent," for those who know, for those who wait. That phrase became a lightning bolt. Online forums erupted with speculation. Secret societies, hidden networks, whispers of the Cercle Maritime, a rumored group of nobles who escaped the French Revolution and attempted to establish secret enclaves across the globe. Long dismissed as myth, the Cercle was said to have preserved pieces of France's heritage through clandestine shipments of heirlooms and documents. Most historians consider it folklore, Ortega warned. Charlie disagreed. Folklore doesn't bury chests of ancient coins under wax-sealed velvet. By now, media pressure had built to a breaking point. Despite their attempts to keep things quiet, aerial drone footage of the original dig site had surfaced online, and news vans began appearing at the university gates. Rather than hide, Elliot and Ortega held a press conference, controlled, careful, and loaded with ambiguity. They confirmed the discovery, but avoided specifics. That same evening, something unexpected happened. Elliot received an anonymous envelope at his temporary lodging near the university. No return address. Inside, a single black and white photograph, creased and faded. It showed three men standing near a rocky coastline, unmistakably Mendocino, possibly in the 1940s. One of them held a metal box. The box. On the back, handwritten in French, "Nous avons trouvé l'une, l'autre doit rester caché." We found one. The other must remain hidden. Elliot felt a chill climb his spine. He shared the image with Charlie and Ortega. She was stunned. "This confirms the box was moved, or at least discovered, before," she said, which aligns with the altered ink and resealed lid. Someone found it, added the map, and reburied it. Charlie examined the handwriting. This was a message, meant for someone else, left in plain sight. But the biggest twist came days later. One of Ortega's graduate students, digging through the digitized French military archives, stumbled across a sealed document labeled Projet de l'Ombre, dated 1793. The translated title, Project of the Shadow. The document referenced covert operations to smuggle royal intelligence across colonial territories. One name kept appearing, CMC. Elliot nearly dropped his coffee. The initials on the brass plate inside the box. Could be an agent, Ortega said, or a code name. But whatever it is, it connects this box to something much, much larger. From that moment, CMC became a lightning rod for speculation. Cryptographers, archivists, conspiracy theorists. Everyone wanted to crack the identity. Some said it stood for Compagnie Maritime Cachée, a secret shipping company. Others suggested Charles-Marie Clément, a known exile with ties to French resistance movements. But no theory stuck. As all this unfolded, Elliot found himself changing. No longer just a seeker, he was now a symbol, a living link to a mystery that spanned oceans and centuries. And with attention came pressure. He received more offers. Not just money, invitations from secretive foundations, requests from private collectors. One man flew in from Monaco and offered him $3 million just for the photo of the three men. He declined everyone. What started as curiosity had become something deeper, almost sacred. This wasn't just about wealth. It was about legacy, about truth. And still, the question burned in his mind. What happened to the second box? Where was it? And was someone else already looking? Charlie had a theory. Whoever reburied the first one might have done it to protect the second. Maybe there was a signal in those documents, a map hidden within a map. He wasn't far off. Dr. Ortega, scanning the third document under infrared light, uncovered hidden notations in the margins, coordinates. Not to Mendocino, but to somewhere further south, Santa Cruz. Buried beneath those numbers, scribbled in invisible ink, was another word, soutien, support. Whatever the second location held, it wasn't just treasure. It was meant to assist something or someone. Elliot stared at the numbers, the invisible word, the idea that another box might be buried under his very feet. His fingers curled around the pendant he now wore around his neck, the ruby triangle from the original find. Not just a souvenir, but a reminder. The seal he had broken wasn't just on the box, it was on a story that hadn't finished yet. And just maybe, it was only beginning. 3 weeks later, Elliot stood at the edge of another trail, this one near the craggy coast of Santa Cruz. Wind cut sharp through the cypress trees above him, and below, waves crashed violently into black rocks as if trying to erase the very shore. The coordinates hidden within the scroll pointed here, not to an exact point, but to a stretch of coastal land long forgotten by tourists and untouched by development. The map wasn't detailed. It was suggestive, but Elliot wasn't alone this time. Charlie was with him, and so was Dr. Ortega. Her university had quietly secured a permit to investigate the area under the guise of coastal erosion analysis, giving them a narrow window of time to search without drawing attention. Using ground-penetrating radar, Ortega's team began sweeping the upper edge of the cliff, careful to mark any anomalies in the soil. It wasn't long before something stood out. Roughly 20 feet inland from the cliff's edge, they found a rectangular void beneath 3 feet of compacted earth. A void that didn't match any geological feature or root system, just like before. This time, Elliot didn't hesitate. The digging was meticulous. The soil here was harder, packed with small stones and a layer of tough roots. After 2 hours of careful work, the shovel struck something solid. Not metal, but wood, dense, dark, and soaked with time. Unlike the first box, this one bore no seal, no markings, just the faint scent of salt and decay. It was larger, heavier. With 2 sets of gloves, they pried it open together. The lid groaned. Inside lay not velvet or coins, but layers of tightly bundled oilcloth. And beneath those, metal canisters, cylindrical and sealed with wax. Alongside them was a leather-bound folio, swollen from moisture but intact. Dr. Ortega opened the folio first. Inside were dozens of folded sheets, each one covered in military diagrams, shipping manifests, and ciphered notes. One document stood out, a chart tracking naval movements off the French coast during 1792, along with handwritten annotations suggesting alternative escape routes for item transfers. It wasn't treasure, it was logistics, a wartime relocation blueprint for something far bigger than gold or gems. This, Ortega whispered, is a military operation. Charlie stared at the canisters. If these are what I think they are. Elliot helped him open the first one. Inside, film reels, old, brittle, labeled in French and Spanish. Ortega's assistant quickly examined the markings, dates ranging from 1939 to 1944. The realization sank in. These were World War II intelligence reels, which made no sense. The box was buried in the early 1800s, or so they thought. Dr. Ortega sat down in the dirt, processing the implications. These canisters, they're mid-20th century, but the box, the burial style, it's all 18th century, unless this site was reused. Charlie blinked. You think someone used the same spot to hide something a century and a half later? It would make sense, she said. If the first site was considered compromised, this could have become the fallback. They kept digging. Another layer of the box revealed several passports, French, German, and one American, each issued between 1935 and 1941, each with false names. They also found a sealed pouch filled with typed pages in German, the edges crisp, likely untouched since they were hidden. Elliot felt the chill again. This wasn't about exile anymore. This was espionage. As Ortega's team cataloged the contents, a pattern began to form. The materials pointed toward a network, possibly operating between Europe and South America, using California as a brief stopover or emergency dump point. The implications were staggering. 2 caches, centuries apart, hidden in the same coastal region. 2 eras of conflict, 2 sets of secrets, and one mysterious thread running through both. The initials CMC. When Ortega opened the last container, they found it, an old journal wrapped in oilskin. The cover was cracked, its pages handwritten in flowing cursive. French. The author's name was never given, but the entries told a fragmented story. A voyage from Bordeaux under assumed identities. A storm near the Caribbean. A desperate plan to split the cache into 2, hiding one in the north, one farther south, and one chilling final line. Only those marked by the circle may return. The seal must not be broken again. It hit them like a lightning bolt. The circle. Not just folklore. It was real. This was their final breadcrumb. Elliot didn't speak for a long time. He watched the ocean. He felt the weight of centuries pressing down on his shoulders. The chain of secrets, passed hand to hand, buried and forgotten, until now. When the news of the second discovery leaked, everything changed. The French consulate requested diplomatic access. Historians flew in from Germany, Spain, and Chile. The FBI opened a quiet inquiry into the intelligence materials, carefully avoiding headlines. Elliot, he became the center of a storm he never asked for. Yet through it all, he remained grounded. The millions earned from the first find were untouched. He continued to work with Ortega and Charlie, turning down book deals and TV offers until he could make sense of it all himself. One night as they pored over the journal, Charlie pointed at a passage written in code. Ortega's assistant deciphered it 2 days later. It referenced a third site, no location, only a phrase. In the mouth of the drowned gate, beneath the twin stones, a riddle, a new trail, and possibly a final destination. The idea of a third box became a global obsession. Treasure hunters flocked to the California coast. Cryptographers debated the phrase online. Geologists attempted to cross-reference twin stones with coastal formations, but nothing surfaced. The drowned gate. Was it a metaphor? A cave? A sunken ship? To this day, no one knows. Elliot didn't go searching again. Not yet. He believed in patterns and patience. If it wants to be found, he told Charlie, it will be. He continued to speak at conferences, never claiming to know more than what had been discovered. He never speculated in public, but privately, he remained convinced. The third cache was real, and it held the answers to everything. The symbol on the coin, the initials, the circle, maybe even to something bigger, something still shaping history in the shadows. And now we ask you, if you had stumbled on that second box, layered with secrets, connected to 2 wars, and tied to a possibly centuries-old network, what would you do? Would you go looking for the third one, or would you leave it be? We want to know. Let us know in the comments. What would you do next? And tell us where you're watching from. Your city, your country. We love hearing from you. Make sure to like this video if you're fascinated by real-life mysteries, hidden histories, and stories that still have unanswered questions. And subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Because who knows? The third box might not be in California. It might be in your hometown. Months passed. The media attention eventually cooled, but the mystery never did. Elliot Granger found himself split between 2 realities. One where he was now a millionaire with a best-selling memoir and a global audience, and another where he still stood alone on windy cliffs, his boots digging into the same kind of earth that once hid secrets for centuries. The world had moved on, but Elliot hadn't. Not entirely. He kept returning to the phrase from the journal, in the mouth of the drowned gate, beneath the twin stones. It haunted him, not just because it hinted at a third cache, but because of the way it had been written, urgent, deliberate, and with the kind of finality that only comes from someone who knows they won't live to see what's next. He met with linguists, historians, cryptographers. Everyone had a theory, but none could pinpoint a location. Some thought the drowned gate referred to a cave system now submerged. Others believed it was a collapsed mine near the coast, or even a shipwreck site long forgotten beneath Pacific tides. As for the twin stones, there were over 24 formations along the California shoreline that fit the vague description. Too many leads, too many false alarms. Charlie eventually returned to his bookshop, and Ortega resumed her academic work, though both remained available for late-night calls when new ideas surfaced. But it was Elliot who couldn't let go. He no longer searched for wealth. The money from the original finds had secured his future. He donated much of it quietly, set up scholarships for archaeology students, funded digitization efforts for lost European archives. He never wanted to be remembered as a man who got rich. He wanted to be remembered as someone who unearthed truth. Then, one morning, nearly a year to the day after he found the first box, something shifted. He received a package, no return address again. Inside was a single object, a compass, but not just any compass. The casing was brass, old, and engraved with a tiny insignia, a trident piercing a rose. Elliot froze. It was the same emblem from the map inside the first box. The needle didn't point north. Instead, it quivered, slightly off-center, as though something stronger than the Earth's field was pulling it elsewhere. Taped beneath the lid was a message, handwritten in French. Vous êtes prêts maintenant? Suivez le battement. You are ready now. Follow the beat. He showed the compass to Charlie and Ortega. Both were stunned. The design, the insignia, none matched known navigational tools. It was likely custom-made, possibly a directional guide keyed to a buried signal, perhaps magnetic, perhaps symbolic. Elliot spent days walking the coast with it, watching how the needle danced, not wildly, but subtly, always toward the south. He followed it past Monterey, past Big Sur, then into a narrow inlet near a crumbled lighthouse at Piedras Blancas. The compass stopped spinning. He stood before 2 large stone pillars, naturally formed by centuries of wind and salt. Twin rocks, bent like crooked fangs. He stepped between them. A faint trail led downward toward a shallow cave, barely visible unless you knew where to look. Inside, darkness swallowed the sunlight within the first 5 steps. He lit a lantern. At the back of the cave was a wall. Nothing special, except when he held the compass near it, the needle twitched violently. Elliot ran his hand along the stone, feeling for inconsistencies. Then, a hollow knock. He dug carefully. Minutes later, his fingers brushed wood. This box was different, older, heavier, and beneath it, he felt something metallic. A frame, possibly iron, possibly a container sealed deep within rock. He opened the wooden box first. Inside was only a single scroll, sealed with the CMC insignia and a faded piece of fabric, once red, now almost brown, with the faint outline of a symbol stitched into its center. He took both items, placed them in a secure bag, and reburied the box. He left the cave without disturbing the metal beneath it. Back at the university, Ortega opened the scroll under observation. It was a letter, but not to a king or a noble. It was to those who come after us. It described a movement, a network of thinkers, historians, scientists, and survivors who had preserved not just treasures, but knowledge, documents, inventions, theories, all hidden during times of conflict and silence. A vault, it said, had been created, not to hoard, but to protect, to wait until the world was ready to understand what had nearly been lost. The letter ended with a warning. If this is opened before we are ready, the world will not understand. But if it is opened too late, the truth may already be erased. You who find this, decide wisely. Do not seek it if you are not prepared to carry the weight of knowing. The fabric, later analysis revealed it was once part of a flag, but not a national one. It was a banner for a group that may have existed in the shadows of revolutions, wars, and renaissances. A group historians had dismissed for centuries. A group once called the Circle Maritime. Elliot didn't seek permission. He returned to the cave and excavated the metallic vault. It was sealed in stone, its lid etched with the same trident rose insignia. Inside, he found shelves of scrolls, wrapped parchments, diagrams, and bundles of what looked like journals. Not treasure, knowledge, unpublished designs, unrecorded languages, proof of conversations between philosophers that had never been archived in any textbook. Elliot turned everything over to Dr. Ortega. She and a team of archivists and historians now lead a multi-year effort to analyze, translate, and preserve the contents. None of it has yet been published, and perhaps not all of it ever will be. Some mysteries must be handled gently, slowly, because not all treasure shines. Some simply reveals. And what Elliot discovered wasn't just a box. It was a door. A door to a hidden legacy, one shaped by hands we'll never meet, preserved by people who gave everything to keep truth alive, and unlocked by a man who simply kept asking, what if? And now we leave you with the question that has echoed since the beginning of this story. If you were the one who discovered the third vault, would you open it? Would you dare to carry the weight of what lies inside? Let us know in the comments. Would you follow the compass? Would you cross between the twin stones? And tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing your stories, and who knows, maybe you live near the next great secret. If you love this journey, this real-life mystery of discovery, danger, and destiny, please give this video a like. It helps us share these stories with curious minds just like yours. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of hidden histories and unbelievable finds, and turn on notifications so you're the first to hear what we uncover next. Because remember, some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to be followed.